I think some of you saw the news update that we wrote a few days ago. We had such a marvelous time. We went up to a it's not really seclusion, but it's like a deep inward period, and a lot of more meditation, more quiet time, and then in near Lohagat, quite near for when you go to Babaji's cave. You know, you stay at Woods Villa. Well, it's a couple of hours from Woods Villa.
Yeah, if you came by air, it's about 60 to 70 miles, so 120 kilometers from Woods Villa or Raniket. So not right in the very same area. And not only did the Pandavas apparently live in that area before after they
Left the kingdom.
left the kingdom, and before they went up into the higher hills to leave their body, but also it's quite close, about maybe half-hour drive from Lohagat, and Swami stayed for a long seclusion at Lohagat. And so all of these things are tying together. It almost makes you think that Master knew what he was doing.
And then from Abbot Mount, then a friend of ours had a guest house on the outside of Rishikesh, just on the Ganges, and so we just stayed there one night. But this place had originally belonged to, as we wrote in the letter, to the Maharaja of Garhwal, and Anandamayi Ma lived there. Stayed with him for long periods of time, and we stayed in this. It had been just a little cottage. Now they fixed it up and made it modern. But I just wanted to share with you all, because now we're coming into the holidays and the season of light, and where Ram returned from his to his kingdom and so forth. But it was a very profound experience for us, and we've spent our life on the spiritual path. But one thing, a friend of ours, we were saying how when we did the Living the Gita course, Dr. Aditya from Pune, he led the energization exercises for all of us. And this friend who's newer on the path, she said, "Oh, I got so much out of it. I learned a lot of new things about the energization." And we said to her, "We did too." And she was just shocked. She said, "After all these years," and this is what's important, the point I'm trying to come to, is that the beautiful thing about our path is that it's ever new. It's not like, okay, now I meditate, now I know Kriya, now I know energization. You're always trying to go deeper and make it fresh and make it more vibrant and get a new experience out of it. So it keeps you from being complacent. Well, yeah, I got Kriya, so now I go about my life. But are you doing your Kriyas deeply? Are you meditating deeply? Are you doing your energization with enthusiasm? And just to keep, and this is a good time of year to think about it, because outwardly it's the symbol of Rama coming, the light returning of Dharma, returning to earth. But think about the light of your own meditation, the inspiration in your own life, and try to renew it now. Try to, if you can, I know it's a busy family time, but see if you maybe come to the center and have a longer meditation, or whatever you can do to bring you more inspiration. But that's the beauty, the gift, and also the challenge of our path, because it's something that you need to constantly, like a beautiful eternal flame, you need to constantly keep that flame burning, constantly give it your renewed dedication, your inspiration, your devotion. And so think about it now in this time of year to really, what can I do to make my own spiritual life more inspiring, more vibrant? Because I know there were 4 of us on this trip. Jyotish, myself, Diana, and Pia. And we all felt profoundly blessed by it. And we've been doing this for a long time. But it's always, you can always take the next step. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So we just encourage you to think about spiritually, what is your next step? And maybe don't compare yourself to anyone else. Don't think, oh, well, my next step's so little compared to somebody else's next step. Not in God's eyes. Not in God's eyes. In God's eyes, every little movement of devotion or dedication or selflessness, it's a huge victory in God's eyes. So I just think about it yourself and think, what can I do? Not to just be on a spiritual plateau, but how can I start climbing that mountain once again with that renewed inspiration that I felt when I first came on the path.
You know, there's another aspect to this. Ram, obviously, you all know the story, and so I don't need to repeat the story of the Ramayana. But Ram represented absolute Dharma. We read something very interesting that the Ramayana, Ram never wavers from absolute Dharma in the Ramayana, because the Ramayana comes from a higher age where Dharma was well established. But the Mahabharata, Krishna, who's obviously just as enlightened as Ram, still in that age, he has to work with some trickery. He has to move away from the ability to proceed with absolute Dharma, because the age is there's too much turmoil in it. And if he just withdrew and held his own center in Dharma, he couldn't have effectively accomplished what God wanted to accomplish through him. But so in that higher age in which Ram had to leave and return, in one sense, he was leaving and returning. But in another sense, because the hearts and the minds of everyone were on him, he never left and returned. He was always there. And so his return was a return of his physical form, but not his spiritual form. The reason that's important is that for all of us, Ram or Krishna or Master or any of these great souls, they have never left us. And so in one sense, the ego has to take this step-by-step apparent evolution to be released from ignorance, or to dissolve itself away from its ignorant view. In another sense, Ram, or our own soul has never been out of complete attunement with God. So your real self has never left your kingdom. It's only a seeming leaving, because we have become unable with our physical senses to see our spiritual nature, just as people with their physical senses could no longer see Ram, and therefore they thought he was gone. And therefore when he returns, there's the return of the light, because that is him coming back to the ability for them to perceive him with their physical senses. But it's helpful to try to realize that in our true essence, we have already achieved that which we're trying to achieve. And so in our meditations, if we constantly think, oh, I've got so far to go, oh, I don't know if I can ever make it, that just reaffirms the ego and the distance of the ego from our true self. Much better, Master said to his disciple, Dr. Lewis, don't pray to God, pray in God. Meaning, don't think of yourself as an ego reaching up to God, thinking of yourself as a soul that's already in God, and pray in that sense. So in this sense, Ram, Krishna, Master, our own higher self are already united with God. But even in that union, as David was saying, every meditation is new. But even in that great state of samadhi, it's not like everything is, oh, well, another day in samadhi, I guess I'll just relax now. Master changed the concept of Satchitananda. He said, instead of saying just Ananda as joy, say ever new, ever expanding joy. Because even in that highest state, things are ever new, ever renewing. Sitting alongside the banks of the Ganges. By the way, just another connection with Swamiji. You know, many of you know from his story that he spent a month at Vishishtagua meditating in that cave. You can see Vishishtagua from this property. So it's right there, right there by where Swami was.
And we went and meditated.
Yeah, we went and meditated at Vishishtagua on our way back. But I was having a meditation along the Ganges, and we were able to sit and meditate just feet from the Ganges, 10 feet or something like that, 3 or 4 meters from the Ganges. And so I was meditating there, and it struck me that if you look at the Ganges itself, that river has been flowing for a long time, so millions of years. So when Anandamoyi Ma was at that same spot meditating on the Ganges, she looked and she saw essentially the same scene that we were seeing, the same hills, the same banks, probably the same large rocks in any case, if not the little rocks, the same river. And so that is unchanging. So there's an aspect of the eternal within us that doesn't change, but not a single drop in that river did she see in that same position. So the river itself is constantly, always changing. It's never from one moment to another not changing. And so we're like that. We have the eternal and the changeable within us. Our problems come, our pain comes, our struggles come when we try to say, okay, this ever-changing reality that is my life, I don't want it this way, I want it this way, and I'm going to try to freeze it in place. And if I can't freeze it in place, I'm going to be unhappy. And it's that attachment to trying to freeze something that is unfreezable. That's the ego's way, because it doesn't, the ego doesn't relate easily to eternity. The senses don't relate. So we think, oh, I can't lose my house. If I ever lost my house, I don't know, I'd just die. I'd cease to exist. Well, of course you wouldn't. Your house is just one little cupful of the Ganges that's passing in front of you. And so everything that we're attached to is going to go. And if it's not the going, the leaving, that causes us difficulty or pain, it's our attachment to not allowing life to move on. As Swami's song, life flows on like a river.
Yeah, as we were meditating along the Ganges, Swami's song just kept going through my mind over and over. Life, maybe your choir sings it, I don't know, but the words are, life flows on like a river that homes to the sea, 1 hour bounding through mountain vales, 1 hour winding through a lea. None can linger by the way, none can coax time to stay. Fleeting scenes move by us like a dream. Cling not, none can be your own, lest ye grieve to be alone. Go within you, there's your home. And that's what the Ganges was singing to us. And just like life is just like a river, it's a flow. And when we try to cling to this or cling to that, this memory, this past experience, we just suffer. But if we just say it's always this moving water, and we were meditating while we were meditating there, it was hard to keep your eyes closed, I must admit, because it was like it was teaching you things, just watching the Ganges. And right in front of us, and I'm giving you a preview of a future blog that I'm going to write because I got a picture of it. The current was very, very strong, but right in front of us, there was a big kind of oval patch of calm water, still without any ripples. And then all around it, the water was surging. And I just thought, oh, that's the mind in meditation. And all these ripples all around it, that's our daily life. And this demand and this problem and that happiness and all. But in the center was just the calm, unruffled stillness. And it was like the Ganges was telling me that you can go through turbulent tides, but if your mind is calm and still through meditation, you won't be ruffled by that at all. And so it was a beautiful lesson. And I know life in modern India is extremely pressured for people. I think it's the most pressured society in the world right now. And yet it's the home, the birthplace of yoga, the birthplace of meditation. Why is that? Why is that? And yet it's for all of us living in India to rediscover, yes, my life is filled with demands, but I also know how to meditate. And I can use the calm inner state of meditation to help me deal with all the demands in my life. And, there's just, I can't tell you how much inspiration we, as people born in the West, I don't feel that we're Westerners. I feel like we have Indian souls. We just happen to be born in the West. But the inspiration we get from all the temples and the shrines and the devotion here in Delhi, right from we have a little flat here that we share with Diana. And right down the street, there's a little community center. And every morning there's a group of men there doing a fire ceremony about 6:30 in the morning. We go for early walks, chanting mantras, Gayatri mantra. And it's just part of the fabric of life. And it's, I guess as a newly adopted Indian, I just want to say, don't forget your heritage. Don't let the fast pace of life here hypnotize you into making you think it's real. It's not real. It's not real. The reality of life is our inner reality. And through the grace of our guru and the techniques he gave us, we can live in that state. And is it easy? No. Is it doable? Absolutely it is. So
we have to gradually allow our minds, but more than our minds, Swami talked about how each of us have something like a specific gravity. So if you think of tamasic as heavy and sattvic as light, we exist somewhere in there. And if we're light, we float near the surface of the water. And if we're heavy, we float near the bottom or at the bottom if we're very heavy. So our specific gravity, it takes a long time to release attachments. Those attachments are like weights that pull us down. Gradually, we release attachments. We release the desire for the mind to be restless. We release, after we've gone through enough ups and downs of pleasure and pain and success and failure, we release the desire for the drama of that. So as we do that, our specific gravity gets lighter and lighter, and we float near this closer to the surface where the light is. Down at the bottom of the sea, it's completely dark. But at the bottom of a river, it's dim and dark. And at the surface, there's light there. And so wherever we're floating in there, but it takes time and our own efforts and desire to release and become sattvic. So Devi was talking about that patch of calm water in the midst of a turbulent river. Well, we as yogis want to live in that calmness, but others don't. There were many rafting trips coming down, and they were all excited and
one capsized and everybody fell out and they were laughing.
Yeah, and just 100 meters above that calm spot was white water, and they were enjoying the excitement of going through that white water. And so the specific gravity of that consciousness that wants the excitement of being restless is somewhere in the middle. That's the Rajasic consciousness. And so that Rajasic nature wants excitement. Master said that we alternate between pleasure or happiness at the top of a crest, then when the wave crashes, it's unhappiness or pain. And so there's the peak of the wave and then the trough of the wave. But he said, in between, we experience boredom. And so we want another wave to come. Well, gradually, we want less and less of a Rajasic wave or a Tamasic wave. And we want that calm patch. We want to remain in, and for us, that's peace, that's calmness, that's joy, that's not the happiness of excitement and fulfillment, but the happiness that's innate within us, the joy of our soul. And we want to stay in that calmness. And so, but it just takes time and a lot of releasing. And for those of us who have Kriya, Kriya is the best technique of everything to release the vrittis, those likes and dislikes. What is it that draws us out to want to be out into the restless water? It's those vrittis, the likes and dislikes, and we want fulfillment of that. So that takes us outside of ourselves. But it just takes releasing those. It takes time. It doesn't, theoretically, it could happen in a moment. But practically speaking, we're not ready to release at that deep level. So every meditation that we do, every time we invite Ram to come back into the kingdom of our consciousness, to bring his light, to lead us to freedom, to help defeat the evil in the world. Every meditation that we have, every effort that we have, takes us deeper and deeper into that. And the joke is that it takes us right back to who we actually are already. It's just our delusion that makes us think that we aren't that. But it's a grand drama that God has created for us.
So,
Questions?
yeah. So do you all have any questions that you would like to ask us? I guess we need to end in about 20 minutes or so. So we have some time for questions. Prem. Hi, Prem.
Thank you for your time. Am I audible?
Yeah, somebody up front will have to repeat the question because
maybe Dharmaraj, you can repeat the question in case it's obscure. If we can hear it clearly, then we'll see.
Can we turn the sound up at all? No. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The question is, so we have Ananda Kailash that is coming up and Master's Trust in Vrindavan. So there's a lot of work happening. We as a Chela, how do we participate more in the saiva? Like in every day, in every moment of our life, though there are demands in families and work. How do we actually be part of this saiva and find happiness, basically?
Okay, we couldn't hear it too well. Someone closer to the microphone, Ken? Repeat.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but
So how about now?
yes,
Okay, so Prem was saying on the one hand, we have these beautiful projects like Ananda Kailash and the work in Vrindavan, which are also, are a lot of, I'm filling in some of the blanks, and then you'll see his face falls, he knows that I'm making up my own question instead. But, that are outward saiva projects. And yet at the we ourselves in our day-to-day lives, we like to serve in such a large capacity, but we have other responsibilities and so on. Our hearts are there. So maybe what can we do either to be a part of those projects from afar, but also what can we do to serve Master right where we are?
That's a nice question.
yeah, nice question. Well, it's a complicated answer because no single person's life is the same as another person's life. So to the extent that we can, with the life that we have, we can serve, but we also have to carry on whatever responsibilities we have. If we simply walked away from our responsibilities and said the world is just delusion, in fact, in past ages, in Kali Yuga, that was the way to be spiritual, was to say the world is so filled with delusion, I'm going to leave it and go up into the Himalayas and live as a sadhu. And that was almost, or as a monk or whatever, but that was almost the definition of true spirituality, is that you left the world. But that's not the path that our path. That's when Lahiri was in the mountains with Babaji, he wanted to remain. He wanted to leave the hustle and bustle of life, go up into the mountains, leave the responsibilities, and just be in that presence. But Babaji said, no, that's not the right thing. That's not your Dharma. But he wasn't saying it only for Lahiri, he was saying it for all of us. That now in this age of Dwapara Yuga, the way that we have to worship is we have to continue our responsibilities, but then within that, we have to keep our mind, certainly our hearts and mind, at least connected to God. Another question that comes up is I have work that requires my concentration. I can't do this concentrated work and think of God all the time, in the forefront of my mind. And so we don't need to. That isn't required of us. But Ramakrishna said it beautifully. The mother cow is busy with eating the grass and moving around, but she always, in the back of her mind, knows where the calf is. So even in the midst of our busy daily activities, there should be a little portion of our mind that is always connected with our spiritual connection. For us, generally speaking, that's Master, but it can be in a lot of ways. It can be just little momentary thoughts, or when we come to a problem, to remember to ask Master to help us with that problem. Think of your daily life, and maybe there are 100 opportunities, even during the busy times, to have little connections with Master. But maybe out of those 100 opportunities, we only take 4 or 5 or 6 where we actually remember him. Well, we can increase that and still keep involvement in all of those responsibilities. Then in addition to keeping God present, living with God in our daily activities, there come discretionary points in our life, either on a daily basis or longer periods of time, where we can in fact go into seclusion or have a longer meditation each week, or do something that deepens that connection, because we can set this time out And so now we come to a project like this. There's going to be endless opportunity for everyone in India to help with this project. And so according to some people have more time in their life, some people are retired and perhaps have quite a lot of free time, but we don't want to think that Ananda is only, this is a big, exciting project, of course, we want to be involved, but Ananda has to be local as well as pan-India. And so it's just as important, more important for you all to help produce the magnetism, to do saiva at the Chennai Center. That's more important because you actually reach people there than it is to come up and serve in some capacity up here. But some mix of both is good.
And I will add also that karma yoga, seva, is a state of mind. It isn't what you do, it's the attitude that you do it. You can be doing anything. You can be being a menial laborer, you could be a high executive or whatever, or a sadhu or a mother. And if what you're doing is with the attitude, my actions are offered in service to God, making this computer program, I'm doing this in service to God. Feeding these animals, I'm doing it in service to God, whatever it may be. You know, at the Ananda Village, at our retreat, the Expanding Light, we have a karma yoga program, and it's, people enjoy it a great deal. They, Prasanna was just there and probably participated in it, but we really work just doing simple tasks, washing the dishes, cleaning the dining room, taking care of the grounds and the gardens, but doing it with the thought that I am serving God. And a few years ago, a wealthy woman took the karma yoga program. She was trying to come onto the spiritual path, and she, you know, was washing the dishes and doing all the things that everyone did. And she, afterwards, she said to the person who was leading the program, Trimurti, she said, you know, at home, I have servants to do all these things, but somehow I don't get any joy when the servants clean my house, but doing it here, I'm experiencing so much joy. Why is that? And he said, because you're thinking of God when you're doing it. And so just whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter the what, it's the how. If you do it with the thought that this is service to God, then you grow. And I think you do this at the Chennai Center, I'm not positive, but it would be good to have just saiva days. And it's not so important the project, but it should be done in silence. It should be started with a meditation. There should be chanting or something going on in the background all the time. And just whatever it is you're doing, do it with the thought, I am offering my life to God and offering this action to God. And by doing it in a concentrated way with a group, then you're able to, when you come in your own daily life, it makes an impact, and you can go have that same experience when you're in your own home and you're having to do whatever it is of a menial nature. So it's important to, that's one of the real gifts, I think, of India, in the Vedic teachings, is that they really show us that there's no aspect of life that we cannot bring God into. And then it makes it all very happy, very joyful.
Okay, other questions?
I have a comment and a question. I see that Divine Mother has preponed the monsoon for us to attend the class. Satsang. Last time, you can remember, she postponed the monsoon. She is so accommodative.
So she said that right now Divine Mother has preponed the monsoon, and she brought the rain sooner. And so How does that help us talk tonight?
Last time
And last time she postponed the monsoon. So because remember it started raining right during your talk. And so everybody was safely in the hall and couldn't, complain about the rain and traveling. So she said the Divine Mother is arranging the rains around our satsang time with you.
But now are you trapped in the center now?
Not yet.
Okay, because we got trapped in a church one night, so we just decided, oh well, we're yogis, we'll meditate all night. So if you get trapped, just meditate all night. But it doesn't sound like you're getting trapped there. So
how do you attune our will to the divine will?
How do we attune our will to the divine will?
well, the first and most important thing is to have the intention to do that. Because if we don't have the intention to attune our will to divine will, then it's not like it won't happen. We'll just not even remember to try to do it. And so at the end of every meditation, I end always with, I bow to Master and I ask him to guide me through the whole of the day with all the experiences, all of my thoughts, all of my feelings, that he guide me, that those be in tune with his will, so that I'm trying to negate or diminish the will of the ego. So to have that clear intention and make it a conscious, real part of your life. And then when you come up to decision points, which we have throughout the day, in any case, to then take just a moment. It would only take 5 seconds, 10 seconds to say, Master, guide me in this decision. And that attunes our will then. So it's a simple thing to do. So it's not difficult. It's difficult to remember to do it. And so that remembrance, we have to train ourselves so that it becomes more habitual.
And also, it isn't so obscure as we think sometimes, because we've been given wonderful guidelines. We have the yamas and the niyamas. And, as you know, non-violence, non-lying, non-stealing, non-sensuality, non-greed, and so forth. We have, and we were just watching episodes from the Ramayana, from an old series on TV. And, it's just always asking, what's Dharma here? What's Dharma? I will not waver from Dharma. So yes, there are individual choices to be made, but it isn't as though we don't have any guidelines. We have directions to move towards. And for example, when we were staying in Rishikesh at this guest house on the Ganges, we were so enjoying ourselves. There were 4 of us. And we thought, oh, can't we stay one more day? Because it was all open. But we had an appointment on Monday. This was Saturday night. We had an appointment in Monday in Delhi that we had a commitment to someone. And we were saying, oh, maybe we can cancel it, postpone it. And then we just thought, that would be selfish. This person has gone out of their way to come see us on Monday. And so what was God's will there? It wasn't a big, obscure thing. It was, of course, we don't think of ourselves first. We think of the other person first. So again, look at as I say, it's not that complicated. If you follow the teachings and the guidelines and try to live in Dharma, and the more you do that, and that's what I found so inspiring about watching the Ramayana. Ram didn't have to ponder, oh, what should I do? What should I do? Do I have to do what my father says? If it had been a modern drama, it would have been all psychological. He never wavered. Of course I do my Dharma. My father said I have to go, I have to go. No, that's the end of the story. And so, just to cling to Dharma as much as you can. And the more you do that, the more your consciousness becomes aligned with God's will. That's the point.
Right.
That's the point.
And so there are two aspects. One is to remember to ask for guidance, but the other is most of the time we already know the guidance.
Yeah.
It isn't, oh, what is your will? We know we shouldn't cheat somebody. We know we shouldn't shout at somebody. We know we shouldn't get angry. So we don't need to discover what God's will is. We just have to do Dharma. And so it's the balance of both of those. Well, we maybe have time for one more question. Okay.
Clearing out which hand you can see.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you, but also what you said before about the institute. Swamiji had envisioned the Temple of Light as well as the institute much before they actually manifested. And in India, he had envisioned this in the 60s. But from the 60s, he had never let up his energy. So even when he returned back in 2003 and 4, he once again tried to test the waters. Is it ready now? So that really is inspiring, that even though he was detached from it and he wanted it, and it was a thing that Master wanted manifested, but he waited for it to manifest in its own time, but he was also constantly putting energy into it and testing it time and again to see if it was coming. So it's coming in such a big way now. So it's just a big gratitude to Swamiji showing us how to continuously keep putting energy into the world in this positive direction in order to manifest things. Although yes, it would manifest in Master's time, but that we never let up our efforts.
That's exactly
right.
right.
It's very true. There was a time, Swami constant, and this is really a wonderful model for us. He was constantly trying to attune his will to Master's will. So he said his own self-definition is, I'm a disciple. He didn't think of himself as an author or a founder or any of that. I'm just a disciple. But there was one time when he was living in Italy, and we got a relatively obscure email from somebody in India who said basically that Master's teachings, this was a couple helping design book covers for some of Master's publications for YSS. And they said they're just not getting out in India. And they wrote an email to the village, and we kind of didn't even know whether to pass it on to Swami or not. But finally we decided, well, we better let Swami know. So we sent him this email, meaning that for us it was just a little ripple in the surface. Swami immediately, the next morning, he called and said, I want you all to come over to Italy. We need to discuss, because I think this is a sign that we should go to India. And so he was constantly, just as you were saying, putting out energy toward what he perceived to be Master's will. And so he never let that flag and always kept it going. And it was a beautiful example for us.
But also remember, this is a marvelous model for all of us. When your life is given to God, you just keep putting that energy out, keep putting that energy out. And yes, it can manifest in things like Ananda Village or Ananda Kailash or Ananda Chennai. But more important than any of those outward things is keep putting out the energy to find God. Even if you think you're thwarted, even if you think you're blocked every step of the way, you never lose that focus of your life. You keep trying, even against seemingly impossible odds. And then one day, just like this property was bought in 1960, it was fated, it was inevitable, it was unescapable it would happen. The same with our spiritual search. If we just keep trying, right now, Master knows exactly when and how we're going to find moksha. And it will happen in the same way. And so we just have to remember that it's all in God's hands. But as long as we don't lose that enthusiasm and that belief that we can find God, it will happen. There's no escaping it. So we're all in this together. And I think it will be a great day, one day when we all find ourselves dancing in the astral world with God and all the great masters. And one day it will be that. So it's such a joy for us to see you all. And